Hey, welcome back to my channel. My name is Carter, and I just got out of The Last Voyage of the Demeter, which is a movie based on a single chapter from the novel Dracula by Bram Stoker, and it focuses on a ship's crew. They're aboard the Demeter, and they have a bunch of crates on board, and one of them holds Count Dracula, and it's headed for London, England. Starting out with the positives, I thought that this movie had a few great sequences. There's a few sequences here and there that have some really great tension, some really great gore and action, some great like horror violence. The setting of the ship is the movie's biggest plus. It's very interesting and very unique, and there's a lot of like horror that you just can't get away. There's a few good sequences about like people trying to escape, people trying to get out, and you just feel the isolation, you feel the fear of just being stuck on that ship. And I think that that was a great choice for the setting. The main character Clements actually has a pretty good arc. He's very likable, he's very gung ho, and I thought that a lot of his scenes, especially with it's like Wojak, played by David Dashmalan, they did very well playing off of each other. And they were my two favorite characters in the movie by far. They did a good job of kind of elevating characters that could just be very one note, characters that could just come off as like basic horror tropes. But I think that the setting, along with the time period and those actors, really just elevates the characters in this movie to be a little more than that. And the first two acts are actually pretty great. I liked a lot of things in them, and I thought that the setup for everything was very well done. Also, the close-ups of Dracula look really cool, and there's a few like dialogue scenes here, exchanges that I thought were great as well. The lighting in this movie is pretty cool. There's a few different sequences with like thunder and flashing lightning and like lanterns that they use that just light the set and the movie very eerily. And of course, there's like a few great sequences in the trailer that they're shown where Dracula's like hiding and then thunder strikes and you see him, lightning strikes and you see him. However, it's not all perfect, and the more I thought about this movie, the more problems that I have with it. So we're gonna get right into the mixed. For me, it's the pacing. The first two acts are paced pretty well. It's just sometimes I felt like maybe they could have cut a little bit here and there, trimmed it up to be a little bit faster moving. I think that would have benefited quite a bit because it's very slow, and then the third act breezes by in just a matter of minutes, and it will leave you a little bit like underwhelmed, almost like, oh, that's the ending, that just happened. Also, there's a very annoying thing they do where they show you the ending at the beginning and then go back to it. That kind of really bothered me, but it would have been nice to kind of save that or have a little bit more factor into that, maybe a reveal at the end that seems fairly obvious they're going to do, and it's set up throughout the movie, and then they just don't do it. Very strange. Going into spoiler territory just a little bit here. I'm not going to describe anything or any specifics, but it has to do with the kills. So if you don't want to listen, just mute me for about 20 seconds. Just going to the first two acts, it's very interesting what Dracula does with the kills. It's very fun, very cool to see all this blood, to see the different ways he does it. And then as soon as the third act hits, it's just bites and bland kills, nothing inventive whatsoever, and it really bored me, honestly. It really just annoyed me, it irked me. I did not like that one bit, but it's in the mixed because it starts off great but just ends so poorly. Another thing here for the mixed is the CGI. I mentioned that Dracula looks great close up. However, from afar, I'm not sure if it's the lighting or the CGI. I don't know what's practical and what's not. It just looked very bad in movement, and sometimes some of the quick cuts just looked terrible, and I did not think it held up at all. It looked very 2010s esque, 2008, and not in a good way. And going into the negatives, for me, the biggest negative was the third act. Both the writing and just how it all wrapped up was very underwhelming. Again, a lot of the movie and its rules rely on you knowing the plot of Dracula and knowing that, yes, Dracula is in the rest of the book. So that takes away a lot of the stakes and a lot of the tension, especially for the end of the movie. And I think that it kind of just falls flat in the last third, especially. There's a lot of character choices, a lot of just weak writing moments where it's like, okay, how did Dracula end up in that room? They show the whole room and he's not there. Was he just waiting for everyone to show up and then he takes his victim? Why doesn't Dracula just fly away? Why doesn't this work in this universe? Why doesn't this work? And again, it's been a while since I've read the novel Dracula, but they just don't really explain it. They just kind of leave it, and then they leave the film very like open-ended. And I again haven't read Dracula in a long time, so maybe that's how it's supposed to be. Maybe some characters factor into the novel, but I honestly hated the ending, the way it wrapped up. There's a lot of things here that they just seem to forget about that they introduce early on, and I think it just falls terribly flat. and I really did not enjoy the ending. It soured me on the rest of the movie. The more I thought about it, the more I disliked the ending. The first two acts are fairly decent, a lot of fun, some good stuff there. And again, the ending just really soured me on the movie. Walking out of the theater, I was talking with two of my friends, and we both agreed that the setting was very cool, but that it would have been way more interesting to see what happened before the Demeter or what happened after, and that they picked maybe the least interesting part of the story to focus on, which is a bummer, especially since a few of the main performances are very, very well done, but it just wraps up so poorly. A ton of writing choices that are just so boring and bland and don't make sense at all. I feel like it holds up pretty well in the first two thirds, and then as soon as the third act hits, you can just drive a car through some of these plot holes, man. It was pretty bad. Overall, guys, The Last Voyage of the Demeter it's decent. It's watchable. It feels like maybe a January horror flick. I can see why Universal really did not market this in the slightest. I just barely heard about it a few weeks ago. I feel like maybe this movie had a little bit more potential than it let on to. It starts out very strong and then whimpers out towards the end. The ending soured me on the film overall. I'm going to give it like a 6 out of 10. Maybe, I'll like it on a rewatch, but honestly, I do not see myself rewatching this anytime soon. If you're into horror movies, vampire flicks, it might be worth a watch, maybe a $5 Tuesday or a matinee showing. As always, guys, I'm Carter. Thank you so much for the support on the channel, and have a great rest of your day.